thank you for being with us. We are covering these days the situation in Kursk region of Russia. Does the White House support these actions of Ukraine?
I think we'll let the Ukrainians speak to their operations as we typically do. We're focused on making sure that they have the tools and the capabilities they need to defend themselves against Russian aggression. We are in touch with our Ukrainian counterparts to try to get a little bit more information about these operations. But again, in terms of details, we'll let the Ukrainians speak to that.
Mm-hmm. But is American weapon used here, is being used here in Kursk?
Again, I think it's best if I let the Ukrainian officials speak to the details of their operations. As I said, we're in touch with our Ukrainian counterparts to see if we can learn a little bit more about what's going on here.
And you were not aware of these plans beforehand?
We were not given any foreknowledge of it.
Mm-hmm. But obviously, Mr. Kirby, you are considering possible outcomes of this situation. This is territory of Russian Federation. What are your thoughts on this outcome?
I think it's difficult right now to come to any conclusions until we've had a chance to talk to our Ukrainian counterparts about what they're actually doing and what their goals are here. So I really want to reserve judgment until we've had a chance to have those conversations. What we are doing and what I can speak to is the continued support that we're giving Ukraine in terms of capabilities. There will be another drawdown package that we'll be able to speak to later this week. More weapons, more capabilities, more munitions for Ukraine to defend themselves.
Okay, and White House is not concerned with this situation.
I don't know how much more I can add to what I've already said. We're watching, we're monitoring this, of course. We're talking to our Ukrainian counterparts. I really don't want to get ahead of those conversations.
Of course, I understand. Okay, then next topic, if you don't mind. On August 15th, Ksenia Karelina, a U.S. and Russian citizen, will be sentenced to yet another unlawful prison term for sending $51 to the Ukrainian fund. And the decision will be made by the same judge who put Evan Gershkovich in jail for 16 years for nothing. The prosecutor is demanding 15 years for Ksenia. Another example, the U.S. citizen, a school teacher, Mark Fogel, is in Russian prison for nothing. When is the next prisoner swap coming?
Well, I wish I could tell you that. I don't know. We're working very, very hard on Mr. Fogel's case. We were actually trying to get Mr. Fogel out in this most recent prisoner exchange. We weren't able to do that. But our State Department colleagues, our embassy there, and of course, leaders here at the National Security Council are going to continue to look for ways to see if we can't get Mr. Fogel back with his family where he belongs.
Could you explain, Mr. Kirby, the timing of this recent prisoner swap? Why now?
Because this is when we could finally get the deal put together. This was many months in the making. The actual date was not driven by some other external calendar event. It was driven by the pace and the scope of the negotiations and how long it took us to get to this point.
Mm-hmm. So there is no secret that there have always been open channels of communication between Russia and the U.S. In terms of this kind of situations, difficult situations. So I understand that this deal was tough. Could you give us some details how the process works? Who was involved from the Russian side? I know that it's sensitive information, so anything you can say. And first of all, I am interested in the details of who was involved in from the Russian side and how was it working from the Russian side?
I think I let the Russians talk to their team roster there. What I can tell you is that what I can tell you is that from our side, I mean, the president was personally involved in this. I mean, an hour before he announced to the world that he wasn't going to seek re-election, he was on the phone with the Prime Minister of Slovenia, locking the final details of this into place. He was very personally engaged. So was Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor. The CIA Director, Bill Burns, was a real key player here. And of course, our Secretary of State and his entire team, including the team in Moscow, involved in trying to get this over the finish line. This was many months in the making. And given the scope of our participation, I think it's fair to assume that the Russians likewise involved their diplomats and involved their intelligence services and involved some of their political leadership in getting this over the finish line. So an awful lot of effort here on the United States side across the interagency to try to bring this to fruition. But it took many months to put together.
Yeah, I can imagine. Vladimir Kara-Murza is a personal friend of mine, and I'm happy for all of them and for him personally, and thank you for doing this. Would it be correct to say, Mr. Kirby, that it was Vladimir Putin who set the rules in this prisoner swap? Because, you were saying that you wanted Mr. Fogel to be freed as well, but he was not in the final list of prisoners. So was it Putin?
Here's the thing about negotiations. Both sides come to the table with ideas and proposals, and both sides hash it out. And that's what happened here. This was a negotiation. It wasn't driven by one individual on either side. It was accomplished by teams on both sides, working for what they believed were their best interests. In President Biden's view, it was in our best interest to get innocent people, not just Americans, but even Russian dissidents, out of jail, innocent people. And that's what we prioritize. Mr. Putin and his team prioritize criminals, thugs, assassins, spies. He can speak to that. But what we focused on was innocent people. And we got double the amount of innocent people out than the criminals that Mr. Putin got in. But this idea that, he somehow drove all this, that's just a bunch of hogwash. That's not the way negotiations work.
Yes, of course. But did he leave the door open or the window open for the next communication, next negotiations on prisoner swap?
Well, again, we're working very hard to see what we can do to get Mr. Fogel home, as we have been working hard to get wrongfully detained Americans or hostage Americans that are held hostage or otherwise detained in inappropriate ways back home with their families around the world. And we've had a lot of success. More than 70 individuals President Biden has been able, Americans, as Mr. Biden has been able to free and get back home with their families in various statuses of detention. So we're going to keep focused on this. I can't tell you a date certain when that might occur. I can tell you that inside our government, we are actively having conversations about Mr. Fogel's case.
And Ksenia Karelina as well.
And I just will. I don't want to speak for every single case, but I can tell you we're actively having conversations about getting Americans that are being held overseas in ways that are either wrongful or inappropriate back home to their families.
So Donald Trump says that it was Putin's victory. Does it mean that if elected, Trump would stop the practice of hostage exchange, prisoner swaps?
I can't speculate about an election that hasn't happened here in the United States. All I can tell you is that President Biden, for as long as he's commander-in-chief, is not going to stop trying to get Americans back home with their families where they belong. And that President Biden will never praise Vladimir Putin for actions he's taken on the world stage. It's disappointing that any American citizen would look at what Mr. Putin did and try to exalt it in any way whatsoever.
The last question, if you don't mind, I was wondering, this prisoner exchange, does this mean that it gives an opportunity to the Ukrainian and Russian sides to sit at the table and, for example, start talking about about the stopping the war? Does it have any connection between, the humanitarian act that we've seen and the war in Ukraine?
I don't think so. This negotiation was handled by itself, as they all have been. The conversations that we had with our Russian counterparts was about this exchange and nothing more. It's not going to change our policy with respect to Russia. It's not going to change President Biden's view that we've got to help Ukraine continue to succeed on the battlefield. We got to continue to hold Mr. Putin accountable for what he's doing in Ukraine and elsewhere around the world. And I don't see any connection at all to this leading to some sort of negotiation between Ukraine and Russia in terms of ending the war. Here's the thing. Only President Zelensky can determine if and how and when this war can end from a negotiations perspective. He has to be ready to sit down, and we certainly defer to him. And we want him to be able to do that in a way that he's coming at it from a position of strength. So that's why we're going to continue to make sure he has what he needs on the battlefield. I will also say that the war could end today. Right now, as you and I are speaking, if Mr. Putin just got his troops the hell out of Ukraine where they don't belong, he's the one that started this war. He can end it right now if he wanted to. Now, obviously, he has shown no desire to do that, and he has shown no good faith effort to want to sit down and negotiate an end to it. So for as long as he's going to keep violating Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity, for as long as he's going to continue to strike Ukrainian energy infrastructure, kill innocent Ukrainian people throughout the country, we, the United States, President Biden and our team are going to stay lashed up and solidly in support of Ukraine and helping them on the battlefield.
Mr. Kirby, thank you so much for this opportunity. Good to see you again on TV Rain. Thank you.
My pleasure.